Hey there boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John and this is my first video game review. Like, subscribe, and share so that I can make more money and not die of starvation. So this is War of the Roses, a medieval warfare simulator not unlike the Battlefield or Call of Duty series. Instead of a rifle, you carry a broadsword. Instead of cruising around in a tank, you charge the field on horseback. Instead of flying a jet, you use a rudimentary helicopter design created by Leonardo da Vinci. That last one actually isn't true. I've actually been playing War of the Roses for a good 3 months now. The game's been in a closed beta for players who pre-ordered, and that's given me a really nice chance to see the game grow and flourish from the ground up. Now, I originally purchased War of the Roses because of its similarity to Mountain Blade Warband. That is to say, it's basically the same game with better graphics and atrocious single-player content, as you'll see in the first part of this video. Diving headfirst into the review, you'll notice I'm not playing against other human beings at the moment. This is the introductory training grounds for new players, and frankly, I don't think I've ever seen a more horrific AI in my entire life, and I've been playing games for quite a while. The enemies were pretty annoying. The archers have a habit of firing precise arrows in perhaps a tenth the time it would take you to notch and fire your own arrow back at them. Conversely, enemy sword fighters are laughably easy to eliminate. As long as you can lure one of them into a one-on-one, you can repeatedly gore them with your sword until they decide it's time to die. To be honest with you though, my allies were even worse. You'll notice them standing around and not doing a damn thing, stumbling into environmental objects, and just generally not even being a little bit helpful. Really, though, my biggest two gripes about this brief little single-player setup is that it's meant to train new players for multiplayer, which it barely manages to do, and, well, hell, the fact that the single-player received perhaps the most passing of attention from the developers of the game. When did we start preferring visceral gameplay over storytelling? Where's the perfect balance? As god-awful as they are, even the Call of Duty series have a cheap story cobbled together. Moving right along to the meat of the game, multiplayer. To start off with, it took me a surprising number of goes at it to even get into a game. The game started me off by crashing me 5 times in a row before letting me in on the action, and once you do get in on the action, you're more likely to be shuffled back to the main menu halfway through the game than you are to finish it, which, by the way, strips you of any XP or gold you may have earned during the match. You'll find that a lot of the time you can't even connect to a server, and if you can find one that you can get into with a decent ping, there aren't going to be a lot of people in it. I understand the issues here, but come on guys. Blizzard did it with Diablo 3 just recently, and so have 100 other multiplayer releases in the last decade. Stress test your servers, and then buy enough bandwidth to accommodate your players. Pretty simple stuff. When you don't do it right, you end up with a bunch of games that just keep dropping and wasting all of our time. As far as actual combat goes, well, a lot of the weapons are very poorly balanced. Some of them are far too fast to block, given the really poor connection you'll have in any servers that aren't hosted less than a block away from you, and many are far too powerful, and in fact don't make a lot of sense from a historical standpoint. Most battles come down to what weapons and armor you've had the time to arduously unlock and put to use, rather than actual skill or talent. Despite the insistence of the developers that their hitboxes are revolutionary, you'll find a lot of cases in which you're unable to land a blow on another player, your sword glancing harmlessly off whatever part of his body you can hit. I've even seen red shields pop up when I hit another player, which essentially means that my sword struck bare skin and still didn't do any damage. There's also a feature called squad spawning, which allows your teammates to pop out of thin air around you and come to your aid if you're the squad leader. This feature makes absolutely no sense, and as far as I can tell, has been loathed by the majority of the community since early beta, and yet still hasn't been removed or even altered. As a result, a lot of the time you'll find yourself going mano a mano with another player, plate armor shining in the sun, swords swinging and clashing fiercely, and then 4 of his friends will shoot out of his asshole and remorselessly beat you to death. Speaking of your teammates, well, they're well off enough in Team Deathmatch since the only objective is to ruthlessly slaughter the opposing tutor team, but in Conquest mode you'll be hard-pressed to find them actually doing a goddamn thing besides stabbing the other team pointlessly. This infuriates me because not only do objectives like capturing a defensive point for your team award you with the XP and gold equivalent of 10 player kills, but mainly because you could single-handedly murder every opposing player 100 times each, and you would never ever win the match, which can only be won via capturing and maintaining the defensive points for your team. Of course, this isn't FatShark's fault. This can be chalked up to plain mass idiocy, something that isn't all that uncommon on the internet. You know, something that might have alleviated some of the problems with teamwork would be an in-game microphone key. A lot of games have these, for example, every single source game and mod ever made, and it makes teamwork much, much simpler. As it is, in War of the Roses, the best you can do is stop and type out a message in chat, which leaves you very, very exposed, and more often than not, is not read by a damn person on the server. Although you might not be able to tell from the video, this game is very pretty. Sadly, it's also very poorly optimized. I have an expensive computer, which I built myself, that can easily max the most recent games on the market, many of which are much nicer to look at than War of the Roses. But to even play without a stutter, I had to drop the graphics down to medium, and to capture this footage, I had to get down to low, with the boots and the fur. Now, this is a common problem made with a lot of games not produced by huge studios, and it is understandable. Streamlining a game so that it will run well on every processor and graphics card combination on the market is tricky business, and smaller companies like FatShark don't have the same bankroll that Bethesda or Rockstar do. Even still, I would much rather be uploading the 720p video that my rig is capable of than the maximum 420p train wreck you're watching right now. You know, to be honest though, I think my biggest gripe against War of the Roses is that it's simply not finished. As I stated at the beginning of the video, I've been an active participant in the beta for some time now, and trust me, the final release of War of the Roses feels no different from the final beta or the 10 beta releases before that. We're still dealing with the same unstable servers, the same unbalanced array of weapons, and the same broken features, or features we'd like to see that aren't being implemented, that beta players have been looking at for months now. Don't get me wrong, I'm not all that sore about it, but I expected a finished product when I purchased this game, and in fact, I did my best to help turn it into that. Sadly, I feel like FatShark and Paradox have dropped the ball and released to the market what is essentially an extended beta. I'm just disappointed, and I hope that a lot of the issues I've outlined are fixed in the months to come. Honestly though, this isn't a bad game at all. When you're in the middle of a melee or a one-on-one, swords clashing, sparks flying in the air, two or more opponents battling viciously to kill the others, it can be very tense and exhilarating. When you manage to fend off and kill another player, or even better, 2 or 3 players looking to overpower you, it's a very satisfying experience. Archery isn't really my thing. I usually wind up hanging back and ending the match with 2 or 3 kills and no deaths as an archer, so I spend a lot of time doing what amounts to nothing at all. But I know a lot of players really enjoy using the longbow or crossbow to rain arrows down upon the opposing team from afar. The customization features are nice too, though the speed at which you accumulate the gold and experience required to unlock individual items and the cost of those items is a bit disparaging. I don't think the rate should go back to the ×10 multiplier that they were at during the beta for testing purposes, but I do think a lowering of prices or a raising of income would definitely help. On the bright side, there are probably more than 100 different combinations of swords, axes, spears, and hammers, each of which can be further customized into combat style, weapon materials, and even grip style, along with a handful of different armors and helmets. This level of customization and detail really helps give the game some overall replayability and goals to strive for during gameplay. Sadly, the game is overall unpolished and simply not finished. The lack of any kind of single-player campaign will probably leave you tired and disillusioned of war after maybe a month or even less. The developers seem more than willing to listen to their fans and continue to develop the game in the direction that it needs to go, though, so there's a lot of hope for the future of War of the Roses. Overall, I would definitely suggest buying this game. It isn't particularly expensive, and once some of the more painful bugs are weeded out, it will definitely be a blast to play with your friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and share. For the love of God, I'm so hungry. If you hate me or the review, feel free to find me in real life and punch me in the nads. There's no such thing as bad publicity, folks.